The great towers of Allura 7 touched the edge of the sky. They shimmered under the light of twin suns, standing like silent judges over the hundreds of species gathered below. Ships of every shape and color hovered in the skies above the city, representing the strength and pride of their homeworlds. Allura 7 was the seat of the Galactic Union, where laws were made, alliances forged, and peace was maintained, at least on paper. Inside the Central Council Hall, the air felt heavier than usual. Commander Ethan Cross, humanity's representative, stood alone at the far end of the chamber. Around him sat the council members, leaders from the oldest and strongest civilizations in the galaxy. Their eyes watched him with boredom, some with amusement, others with quiet contempt. Ethan held a data tablet in his hand. His voice was steady, but there was a thin edge of frustration in it. I stand here again, presenting evidence of another violation by the Dravari Empire. Human supply routes in Sector 19 have been attacked. 3 civilian freighters destroyed. 37 lives lost. He paused, glancing around the massive hall. Not a single member seemed surprised. Some didn't even bother to look at him. Ethan continued. We request immediate investigation and sanctions under Union law, as agreed by all member species. The Valari Prime, the Council's senior chairwoman, leaned forward. She was tall and thin, her pale skin glowing faintly under the chamber lights. Her voice carried the cold authority of someone who believed her words were final. Commander Cross, humanity has filed over 30 such complaints in the last 5 cycles. None have provided enough evidence to take formal action against the Dravari. Ethan felt his jaw tighten, but he held his ground. We provided sensor logs, recovered wreckage, and survivor testimonies. How much more evidence do you need? A low, mocking laugh echoed through the chamber. It came from Warlord Joruk, the Dravari representative. His massive armored form leaned back in his seat, eyes glowing faintly red. Perhaps your ships explode on their own. Human. Fragile things often break without warning. Laughter spread among a few council members. Ethan felt his fists clench, but he forced himself to remain calm. This was their game. They wanted him to lose control, to give them an excuse to dismiss him entirely. He took a breath and faced the Valari Prime again. We are not asking for favors. We are asking for the laws of this union to be honored. The chairwoman sighed, exchanging glances with other council members. She gave a small nod. We will take your report under review, Commander. You are dismissed. Ethan's heart sank. He knew what those words meant. They always said the same thing. Review meant nothing. Dismissed meant go away and stop wasting our time. He stood there for a moment longer than was polite. Then he turned and walked out of the chamber. Ethan crossed the grand hallways of the council tower. His boots echoed on the polished floor. Alien diplomats passed him without a glance. Some whispered. Some smirked. Others simply looked through him as if he wasn't even there. He reached the human delegation's quarters and shut the door behind him. Alone in the silence, he sat down at the long glass table in the center of the room. He placed the data tablet down and ran his hands over his face. He had served the Union for over 15 years. He had believed in its mission. He had believed in peace. But every year, it grew harder to believe. Humanity had been patient. They had chosen diplomacy again and again. They had swallowed their pride, hoping their restraint would one day be rewarded with respect. But the respect never came. Later that night, Ethan stood on the balcony overlooking the glowing city of Allura 7. He watched the stars above, wondering if Earth could still trust this union to protect them. He wondered how long humanity could afford to keep turning the other cheek. His personal communicator buzzed on his wrist. He answered without looking. This is Cross. The voice on the other end was grim. Commander, there's been an attack. New Geneva is gone. For a moment, Ethan could not speak. His heart felt like it had stopped beating. He turned slowly to face the communicator. Repeat that. What do you mean gone? Confirmed strike by the Dravari. The colony is gone. Millions are dead. The communicator went silent. Ethan lowered his hand. He stood there, frozen under the alien stars of Allura 7, feeling something deep inside him shift. Humanity had been patient long enough. The stars above Valora, 7 shone cold and distant, uncaring of what had just happened. Commander Ethan Cross stood on the balcony, unmoving. His communicator was still in his hand, but no more words came through. His mind replayed the message again and again. He hoped he had heard wrong. He hoped it was false. But deep inside, he knew it was real. New Geneva was gone. New Geneva had been humanity's greatest colony outside Earth. Built over 50 years ago on the green plains of Neuroprime, it was home to over 12 million people, families, workers, farmers, doctors, teachers. They had come there seeking a better life. It was humanity's pride. It stood as proof that humans could thrive beyond Earth. And now it was nothing but ash. Ethan's stomach twisted. He leaned on the balcony rail, gripping it tightly. His breaths came fast and sharp. For a moment, he felt like he couldn't breathe at all. His eyes burned, but no tears came. His heart felt too heavy for that. He turned sharply and stormed back into the quarters. His steps were hard, angry. He grabbed his data tablet and opened a secure channel to the Galactic Council emergency line. The system made him wait. He paced the room, staring at the wall, fists clenched at his sides. Finally, the Council's hollow symbol appeared on the screen. State your emergency. Ethan didn't bother hiding the fire in his voice. This is Commander Cross. New Geneva has been attacked by the Dravari Empire. Civilian lives lost. Full planetary destruction. I demand an emergency council session. Now. The voice on the line didn't answer right away. Ethan heard quiet typing, as if they were searching for an excuse to delay him. He leaned closer to the screen. Do it. Now. The line cut off. Seconds later, a message appeared. Council session scheduled in 1 hour. An hour later, Ethan stood again in the central council hall. This time, the room was quieter than before. News had already spread. Even the species who didn't care about humans had heard the whispers. Ethan could feel their eyes on him. He stood in the center of the floor, staring up at the council. His voice was hard, steady, with no patience left. 12 million innocent lives lost. An entire human world destroyed. I call for immediate sanctions and military response against the Dravari Empire under Union Law, Section 9. The council members glanced at one another, some with concern, others with clear annoyance. Finally, the Valari Prime leaned forward again. We have received the reports, Commander Cross. We are reviewing the evidence. Ethan took a step closer. His voice grew louder. You don't need to review. The Dravari aren't even hiding it. They broadcasted their victory across every outer system. A cold voice interrupted him. It was Warlord Joruk, standing slowly from his seat. His massive armored frame cast a long shadow across the council floor. Victory indeed, Joruk growled, his voice thick with arrogance. The colony was in violation of our claimed space. The humans knew the risk. Ethan stared up at him in disbelief. There was no violation. New Geneva was built on Union-registered territory. You signed that agreement yourself. Joruk leaned on the rail of his platform, his eyes glowing faintly red. Humans spread like weeds. We decided to clear the field. Gasps echoed through the council chambers. Even those who had no love for humans looked uneasy now. But none spoke up. None challenged Joruk. Ethan's fist shook. He pointed toward the council. And you just let this happen? Again? How many more human lives need to be erased before you finally act? The Valari Prime raised her hand, her voice sharp. Commander Cross, stand down. This is not the place for threats. Ethan laughed softly, but there was no humor in it. I'm not threatening. I'm asking you to do your job. The chairwoman's face hardened. The council will take your request under review. You are dismissed. Those words hit Ethan like a blade to the chest. Again, the same empty promise. The same refusal to act. He turned to leave, but stopped when he heard Joruk's voice behind him, loud enough for the entire chamber to hear. You humans should be grateful we even notice you. You are tolerated, nothing more. And you'd be wise to remember your place. Laughter rose from a few council members. Ethan turned slowly to face Joruk. His face showed nothing, but inside, the last wall holding his anger back finally crumbled. Without a word, Ethan walked out of the chamber. This time, he wasn't walking away in defeat. He was walking toward a decision. A final one. Back in human quarters, Ethan locked the door behind him. He stood in the dark for a long time. The stars outside the window seemed to watch him, cold and distant as ever. He knew what had to be done. He reached for his secure military communicator. His hands no longer trembled. His voice was clear, cold, and final. "This is Commander Cross. Connect me to Unified Defense Command. Activate Operation Last Light." The voice on the other end answered after a long pause. "Understood, Commander. Operation Last Light is live." Ethan stood in the dark, staring at the stars. The days of silence were over. Commander Ethan Cross stood alone in the dim light of the human delegation quarters on Valora 7. His jaw clenched tight. His breathing was slow, steady. The weight of his next actions pressed down on him like a mountain. But the choice had already been made. There was no turning back. Ethan knew what Operation Last Light really meant. It wasn't just a military response. It was humanity's last warning to the galaxy. For years, Earth had played the role of the patient species, the quiet one, the diplomat. Every other species had mistaken that for weakness. That mistake was about to end. Ethan activated his personal terminal and secured the channel. A small blue light flashed on the screen. Then the symbol of Earth's Unified Defense Command appeared. "This is Admiral Kira Holt, Unified Defense Command. I have your activation order. Please confirm, Commander." Admiral Holt's face appeared on the screen. She looked older than Ethan remembered. The war had aged everyone. She was one of the few people Ethan still trusted. He nodded slowly. "Confirmed. Operation Last Light is active. Move all fleets to high alert status. Full blackout. No transmissions until I give the order." Admiral Holt leaned forward slightly, her voice low and serious. "Do you understand what this means, Ethan? If we do this, there's no going back. The Union will turn against us. We'll be alone." Ethan didn't flinch. "We've been alone for years, Admiral. They just never said it out loud." Holt nodded slowly. "Very well. The fleet is yours. What's the target?" Ethan leaned on the table, his voice steady and cold. "We strike the Dravari fleet at Arcos Station. Hit them fast and hit them hard. I want no survivors." Admiral Holt signed off without another word. The channel went dark. Ethan stood there in silence, staring at the dead screen. He knew the cost. He knew this could start something far bigger than the Union could handle. But if the Union wouldn't protect humanity, then humanity would protect itself. He left the quarters and took the private lift down to the human embassy's war room. The room was dark and silent, locked to all but the highest level security. As he entered, the systems came online. Blue tactical maps appeared in the air, showing ship positions, fleet movements, and enemy locations. Ethan stood before the display and traced a finger over Arcos Station. It was one of the Dravari's largest outer defense platforms, heavily armed and constantly guarded by their warships. It was also deep in disputed space. A perfect target to send a message. He sent a silent message to the human fleet, now hiding on the edge of Dravari space. One simple word: prepare. A soft knock broke the silence. Ethan turned to see Ambassador Lyra Dean step inside. She had served as Earth's political voice for nearly a decade. She had spent years begging the Union to treat humans fairly. Like Ethan, she had grown tired of being ignored. She walked toward him, her eyes sharp. "It's done, isn't it?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "The fleet is moving. First strike is Arcos Station." Lyra leaned on the edge of the table, her arms crossed. "They'll call us criminals. They'll paint us as the aggressors. Let them," Ethan replied without hesitation. "We've begged for peace long enough. I'm done asking." Lyra sighed and looked toward the stars outside the window. "Do you think they'll finally respect us after this?" Ethan shook his head. "I don't care about their respect anymore. I care about our people, and no one else is going to protect them but us." Lyra nodded, though sadness showed in her eyes. She knew Ethan was right. The dream of a united galaxy had died with New Geneva. The next day, the Galactic Council called another session. Rumors had spread that the human fleet was on the move. Ethan stood once again in the chamber, his face unreadable. The Valari Prime spoke first. "Commander Cross, We have heard troubling reports of military forces gathering near Dravari space. Do you have an explanation? Ethan raised his eyes to the council. His voice was clear, loud enough for all to hear. We have no more complaints to file. No more requests to make. Humanity will protect itself from this moment forward. The chamber erupted in angry whispers. The council members leaned in, demanding answers. Ethan stood silently, waiting for them to finish. Then Warlord Jorek stood again, his grin wide, his voice full of venom. Your people won't survive open war, human. You are outnumbered, outmatched. You'll burn like your colony. Ethan stared at him for a long moment. His voice, when it came, was cold and final. We'll see. Without waiting for permission, Ethan turned and left the chamber. The council shouted behind him, demanding he return, demanding answers. He didn't look back. That night, in the shadows of Allura 7, humanity's fleet began its final move toward Arcos Station. The time for words was over. The human fleet drifted through the edge of Dravari space like silent shadows. Thousands of warships, hidden by advanced stealth systems, moved as one. No lights, no signals, no warnings. The ships came from every human colony. Some were old, built decades ago. Others were newer, armed with weapons the rest of the galaxy had never seen. Earth had hidden its true strength for years, building fleets in secret, knowing one day the Union might fail them. That day had come. At the center of the fleet stood the UHS Titan, Earth's largest warship. It was a floating fortress, a mile long, bristling with weapons and armor. Commander Ethan Cross stood on the bridge, staring at the star map floating before him. His officers worked in silence. Every one of them knew what was about to happen. No one asked questions. No one hesitated. Status? Ethan asked. Captain Mason, his second-in-command, stepped forward. All ships report ready, sir. Weapons primed. Engines hot. Stealth holding. Ethan nodded slowly. He looked at the map again. Arcos Station was just ahead. The Dravari had grown careless. They never expected humanity to fight back. Their patrols were light, their guard lowered. Begin the final approach, Ethan ordered. Far ahead, Arcos Station hung in space like a giant spiked ring. Dravari warships floated lazily around it, their crews unaware of what was coming. On the Dravari command deck, officers laughed and joked, watching old battle footage of the destruction of New Geneva. They had grown used to victory. They saw humans as weak. They believed that lie with all their hearts. Then the sky changed. Without warning, the human fleet dropped out of stealth. Thousands of ships appeared like ghosts, surrounding Arcos Station from all sides. The Dravari barely had time to sound the alarm. All ships, enemy contact. The Dravari commander's voice was cut off as the first volley struck. Human rail cannons and pulse torpedoes ripped through Dravari shields like paper. Explosions lit up space. One by one, Dravari warships exploded in fire and debris. On board the Titan, Ethan watched in silence. No survivors, he reminded his crew. The order was carried out without mercy. Dravari ships tried to fight back, but they were too slow. Human drone swarms swarmed their engines. Plasma lances cut through their hulls. Arcos Station's defense turrets came alive, firing wildly. For a moment, they held the line. But then the UHS Titan moved in. Its forward cannons charged, glowing bright blue. Fire. The Titan's main guns unleashed a beam of pure energy, slicing straight through Arcos Station's core. The station split apart, metal tearing, explosions breaking through every deck. Within seconds, Arcos Station was gone. Nothing left but a field of burning wreckage. On the bridge, Ethan stood like a statue. His crew waited, holding their breath. They had won the battle, but they all knew this was only the beginning. Send the signal, Ethan ordered. Back on Allura 7, the Galactic Council sat in emergency session. The chamber was in chaos. Every species was shouting, demanding answers, blaming each other. Suddenly, the room fell silent. A large hologram appeared in the center of the chamber. It was Ethan Cross. Behind him, the wreckage of Arcos Station burned in the background. Ethan's voice was calm, cold, and clear. This is Commander Ethan Cross of a unified human defense fleet. Today, we ended the Dravari stronghold at Arcos Station. Let this serve as your first and final warning. Humanity will no longer wait for permission to defend itself. He paused, letting the words sink in. Any species that aids the Dravari will face the same fate. Stay out of our way. The transmission ended. For several heartbeats, the chambers stayed silent. Then panic spread through the council. Some species demanded sanctions. Others called for immediate military action. But most sat in shocked silence. None of them had expected this. None of them had believed humans were capable of such destruction. But now they knew. Back in the human quarters, Ethan stood at the window. Ambassador Lyra Dean joined him quietly. "It's done," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "They'll come for us now," she added. "Let them," Ethan replied softly. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Species who once mocked humanity now watched with fear. Some began calling for peace. Others began preparing for war. The balance of power had shifted, and it had only just begun. News of the destruction of Arcos Station spread faster than any ship could travel. Within hours, every major world, every species, every government in the Galactic Union knew the truth. Humanity had done what no one thought possible. They had struck back. They hadn't asked for permission. They hadn't waited for council approval. They had crushed one of the Dravari Empire's strongest military stations, and they had done it in a single day. On worlds far from the war, leaders gathered in secret. Some watched the footage in disbelief. Some watched in fear. Others watched in silence, their expressions unreadable. Across the stars, old allies of the Dravari began to reconsider their loyalties. For generations, humanity had been ignored, insulted, and treated as weak. Now no one was laughing. On Valora 7, the Galactic Council chamber had not calmed since Ethan's message had ended. The council floor, once cold and orderly, had become a battlefield of words. The Valari Prime pounded her staff against the floor, trying to restore order. "Silence. This session will come to order." But no one listened. The chamber roared with panic. "The humans have violated Union law," shouted a delegate from the Salikian Empire. "They were left to die while we sat here and did nothing," argued another from the Vorn Collective. "We should have stopped the Dravari long ago." "No, the humans are dangerous. They must be punished." The room shook with angry voices. No one could agree on what to do. Fear had replaced reason. Every species wondered the same thing. Who would be next? Away from the council, in the shadows of the diplomatic tower, Ethan sat in a private war room with Ambassador Lyra Dean and several high-ranking officers from Earth. The room was dim, secure, silent except for the hum of the defense maps glowing above the table. Lyra broke the silence. "They won't forgive us for this," she whispered. Ethan leaned forward, staring at the map. "They never forgave us for being here in the first place." Admiral Holt's voice crackled through the secure channel. "Commander, long-range sensors have detected multiple Union fleets mobilizing. Their destinations are unclear, but we believe some may move toward human space." Ethan didn't look surprised. "Let them come. If they move to attack, they'll face the same fate as the Dravari." He knew the risk. Humanity's fleet was powerful, but it couldn't stand against the entire Union if they came all at once. He needed to stop this before it reached Earth's doorstep. Lyra leaned closer. "We have another problem. Our scouts picked up movement near the Dravari homeworld. Jorik is gathering every warship they have left. He's preparing for a final stand." Ethan's jaw tightened. "He won't stop until Earth is burning." Lyra nodded slowly. "And if we stop him, the galaxy will know we aren't bluffing." Ethan stood up, his decision already made. "Prepare the fleet. We move on the Dravari homeworld." The human fleet gathered again in the dark space beyond Dravari territory. Thousands of ships lined up in perfect formation. They had already proven their strength. Now, they would prove they could finish what they started. Ethan stood on the bridge of the Titan, watching the final reports come in. "Enemy forces are gathering," Captain Mason confirmed. "It's the largest fleet we've seen yet. Hundreds of Dravari warships, orbital canons, planetary shields. They're ready for war." Ethan nodded. "So are we." Before they jumped to the final battle, Ethan sent one last message to the Galactic Union. It was short, clear, unmistakable. The Dravari Empire started this war. We will end it. If you want peace, stay out of our way. If you stand with them, you stand against us. He sent the message without waiting for a reply. There was no more time for politics. There was no more time for talk. The fleet engines roared to life. The stars stretched into long lines as the human fleet made the jump to the heart of the Dravari Empire. As they disappeared into the void, Ethan knew the next battle would decide the future of humanity and the future of the galaxy itself. The human fleet burst out of hyperspace at the edge of the Dravari homeworld. The sky before them was filled with enemy ships. Hundreds of Dravari warships formed a wide, thick wall of steel and firepower. Massive battlecruisers, gunships, and fighter swarms floated in formation. Behind them, the Dravari homeworld glowed green and blue, protected by thick energy shields and massive orbital cannons. From space, it looked peaceful. Ethan knew better. The planet below was the heart of the Dravari Empire. Billions lived there, billions who had cheered when New Geneva burned. On the bridge of the UHS Titan, Ethan Cross stood at the front window, watching the enemy line. Captain Mason stood beside him, silent. The crew waited for the command to begin the assault. Ethan gave none. Not yet. Open a channel to Warlord Jorek, Ethan ordered. Mason nodded, working quickly. The enemy fleet hung in place, waiting. Then the face of Warlord Jorek appeared on the bridge screen. His massive frame sat on a war throne, his black and red armor glowing under the lights of his command ship. His mouth curled into a cruel grin. "I was wondering when you'd stop running," Jorek growled. Ethan took a step forward. "I'm giving you one chance, Jorek. Surrender now. End this before your people pay the price." Jorek leaned forward, his eyes burning. "You don't have the strength to take my world, human. You never did. This is where you die." Ethan stared at him without blinking. "You've made your choice." He ended the transmission. "All ships, prepare for full assault," Ethan ordered. The fleet moved into attack formation. On the Dravari side, weapons lit up like stars going supernova. Missiles, plasma bolts, and energy blasts filled the dark space between the fleets. The battle for the Dravari homeworld had begun. Humanity's warships surged forward. The Titan led the charge, its shields glowing bright as enemy fire slammed against it. Behind it, dreadnoughts and destroyers fired everything they had. Massive energy beams cut through the void. Dravari ships exploded, one after another. But the Dravari fought back hard. Human ships took damage. Some exploded in burning wreckage. The space between both fleets turned into a graveyard of shattered metal and fire. On the bridge, Ethan gave his next order. "Launch all fighter wings. Break their line." Swarms of human starfighters poured from the fleet, racing into the thickest part of the Dravari formation. Dogfights broke out across the battlefield. Laser fire lit up the darkness like a storm of lightning. The Titan's main cannons charged again. Ethan stood still, watching the energy build. "Target their command ship." "In this now," he ordered. The gunners locked on. The cannons roared to life, sending twin beams of burning plasma toward Jorek's warship. The beams hit dead center, tearing through shields and armor. Jorek's ship exploded in a ball of fire. For a moment, Ethan thought it was over. But then sensors picked up escape pods. Jorek had survived. "He's running," Mason reported. "Not for long," Ethan replied. "Lock onto his pod. Bring him to me." Hours later, the battlefield was silent. The human fleet had pushed through. The Dravari defenses were shattered. The planet below lay open. Human troops began landing on the surface, securing key cities, disabling planetary defenses, taking control without mercy. On the Titan, Jorek was dragged onto the bridge in chains. His armor was scorched, his face twisted in anger, but there was fear in his eyes now. Ethan stood before him. "You should have left us alone," Ethan said quietly. Jorek spat at his feet. "You're nothing but animals." Ethan nodded slowly. "And yet you lost." Jorek lunged forward, but the guards held him back. Ethan turned away. "Lock him up. The Dravari Empire is finished." From the bridge, Ethan watched the planet below. The human flag was already flying over the Dravari capital. Billions watched in silence as their empire fell. The Galactic Union had done nothing. Humanity had done everything. And now the galaxy would never forget. The crew stood behind Ethan, waiting for his next command. He turned to face them, his voice strong. Send the message. The Dravari Empire has fallen. Let the galaxy know. The crew obeyed. The message went out. Across every system, every world, every station, the news spread like wildfire. No species would ever forget this day. The day humanity took their place not as prey, but as power. The stars were quiet now. No more explosions. No more shouting. No more battle signals filling the void of space. The war was over. The Dravari Empire, one of the oldest and most feared powers in the galaxy, had fallen. Their war fleets were gone. Their cities stood under human control. Their leaders, once proud and untouchable, were now prisoners. All of it had ended in less than 2 weeks. On board the UHS Titan, Commander Ethan Cross stood at the great window of the bridge, staring down at the conquered world below. The human flag waved over the Dravari capital, carried by ground forces who now moved through the silent streets. There had been no final stand on the surface. The people had seen the truth. Their leaders had lied. Their fleets had failed. Humanity had done what no one else dared to do. And now the Dravari people surrendered without a fight. Ethan watched them from orbit. He felt no joy, no pride, only a quiet, heavy understanding. It was finally over. A soft voice broke the silence. It was Ambassador Lyra Dean standing at his side. She looked tired, her face pale, her shoulders heavy with the weight of all they had seen. The council sent a message, she whispered. Ethan didn't turn to face her. And what do they want now? He asked. Lyra let out a slow breath. They're calling for peace talks. They want to meet with you directly. They're offering to recognize Earth as a core power in the Union. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. The galaxy had laughed at Earth for centuries. Now, they wanted peace. Now, they wanted to negotiate. Ethan let out a short breath, almost like a quiet laugh. Now they'd come to the table after all this blood. Lyra nodded, but her face showed no relief. She knew this was not the victory they had dreamed of, but it was victory, and that had to be enough. Ethan turned from the window and walked to the center of the bridge. His officers stood waiting. His soldiers watched him through the ship's internal feeds. Across the fleet, every crew member waited for their commander's next words. Ethan stood tall and spoke clearly. The Dravari Empire is finished. Our people are safe. Our worlds stand free. And the galaxy will never forget what happened here. He paused, letting every word sink in. Let them remember this day. Let them remember that humanity stood alone and won. Across the galaxy, reactions were mixed. Some species cheered. They had suffered under the Dravari for generations. Some species watched in fear, wondering if humanity would come for them next. Others rushed to send offers of peace, trying to secure alliances before it was too late. Humanity had become the power they once feared. The balance of the galaxy had shifted. Days later, Ethan stood once more in the Galactic Council chamber on Valora 7. But this time, he did not stand alone. Behind him stood the commanders of Earth's fleet, Ambassador Lyra Dean, and soldiers wearing the new symbol of humanity's rise, a silver star inside a ring of fire. The council was silent as Ethan walked to the center of the floor. No one laughed this time. No one mocked. Even the Valari Prime lowered her head slightly in respect. Ethan looked at them all, his voice steady. Earth accepts your offer for peace. But hear me clearly. Never again will humanity bow. Never again will we beg. Never again will we wait for permission to defend ourselves. No one argued. No one dared. That night, Ethan stood alone on a quiet balcony overlooking the lights of Valora 7. The stars above looked the same as they always had. But everything had changed. Lyra joined him once more, standing in silence by his side. Do you think they'll ever truly accept us? She asked softly. Ethan stared at the stars. No, they'll never accept us, he answered. But they will never forget us. He turned away from the window, walking into the darkness of the quiet chamber. And so the story of Earth's rise to power was written. A story not of peace, but of survival. Not of diplomacy, but of strength. And across every world, every species whispered the same truth.